Hello everyone, my name is Elijah-David, minister of the 12th Apostolic Sabbatarian Congregation out of 12th Hour in Liberty Hill, Texas. Today is June 29, 2013, or it is the 21st day of the 4th month, 2017. We will start our second service on this Sabbath day with a song entitled, "In Times Like These." In times like these, a Savior. In times like these, you need an anchor. Be very sure, be very sure. Your anchor holds and grips the solid rock. This rock is Yahshua. Yes, He's the one. This rock is Joshua, the only one. Be very sure, be very sure. Your anchor holds and grips the solid rock. In times like these, you need the Bible. In times like these, be very sure, your anchor holds and grips the solid rock. This rock is Joshua, yes, He's the one. This rock is Joshua, the only one. Be very sure, be very sure. Your anchor holds and grips the solid rock. In times like these, I have a Savior. In times like these, I have an anchor. I'm very sure, my anchor holds and grips the solid rock. This rock is a Yahshua, yes, He's the one. This rock is Yahshua, the only one. I'm very sure. I'm very sure my anchor holds and grips the solid rock. Very good. That should be the catalyst that we need to launch us into our sermon. We're going to continue on with the great paradox of the ages. This is the great paradox part 2 of the Parodox, the leader of the Shepherd's Rod movement from 1930 to 1955 until his death. 25 years he was on the scene. That's exactly how long Sister White was on the scene, from 1890 to 1915 when she died. And she had spent 25 years of her life only writing reproof and admonition to the Adventist Church, the leaders, that is, the General Conference leaders, for having formed in 1863, and then finally at last started contending with her for the leadership, represented by these great old horses right here. There you go. And so whenever they rejected the most important message sent to the Adventist Church in 1888 to 1890 by Jones and Ryder, the two messengers of the covenant. Now I'm going to bring that in anymore from now on. When Yahweh sends a messenger, they are messengers of the everlasting covenant that Yahweh made with David. What we're doing is we're looking to develop the mountain of the house of the Yahweh, which is established at the top of the mountains in these last days. And that seed was sown with Jones and Wagner in 1888-1890, two Adventist ministers that did their homework and did their preparation many years while they were Adventist ministers themselves. Both of them were Adventist ministers. And y'all were given a special message to deliver at that Minneapolis conference in 1888, telling the people that this is a new light, and this is more amplification on righteousness by faith. And all the information they brought was dealing with the law of Moses as being the foundation for this unfolding truth on the righteousness by faith. And that was righteousness by faith in the blood of the Yahshua. So now why did I say that these were messengers of the covenant? What covenant? They were messengers of the covenant of the blood of the everlasting covenant of the Yahshua, and you will read about that in Hebrews 13:20. Yahweh the Father. It was expedient that when Yahshua, his son, was laying in the tomb, that he go and raise up his son through the blood of the everlasting covenant that represented his son's blood. That's the only way that Yahshua could come forth from the tomb was the fact that he laid down his life as a sinless offering. No sin against his record, so when he did that, then that gave the Father the privilege, you might say, or the ability then to raise his son up from the grave is through the power of that everlasting covenant. So now, you're going to find out that through this great paradox, as it's unfolding here before our very eyes, this double team of horses became pronounced in 1888-1890. They were already there, but nobody knew it, except B.T. Holiff, and he discovered it right here. Well, he shows this double span of horses coming out from between these two brass mountains between 1890 and 1930. There you have it. We might just zoom in on that and show it to you as close as we can. That date, right here. These here double span of horses, the Grizzle and the Bay. They emerged first between 1844 and 1890. They were created in 1844 as a double leadership of this fourth chariot called Laodicea, Adventist Church. Okay. So the chariot is for one reason. It carries passengers. This is where the laity abides. But the leaders, the ministers, the prophets, this is where they abide. They're the ones that have to hook onto this chariot, and they have to walk. They can't ride. They're the ones that have to walk and carry the burden of pulling this chariot from one location to another. Okay. So, the General Conference, though, they wanted to form a double leadership and oppose Ellen G. White that represented the bay horses. And so they did, but they wanted to, they didn't want to be classified as the lead team pulling on this chariot. They don't like to work. They like to just get up there and take their place on a soft seat here inside this chariot. But no, they can't do that. Because they want to be leaders. I'll be honest, okay, you can be leaders. But you're going to have to take the front lead team, and you're going to have to pull not only the bay horses behind you, but you're going to have to pull away that chariot too. You're going to be the most responsible for everything that goes on inside this chariot and inside the Adventist Church. So they were born initially in 1844, this double span of horses. As I told you earlier on my tape, Ellen G. White represented the bay horses, the pure leadership, pure doctrine, and she also represented the office of inspiration. Whereas the grizzle horses that were also connected second to these here, which represents the opposing leadership that was born also at the same time that these bay horses were created. And so now they're connected also at the same time that these bay horses, but the bay horses was connected first. And now the grizzle horses, they want to pull the team. They want to be in charge of that chariot. So they said, well, we'll just go and connect on the front of these bay horses and take charge of that chariot. That's what they wanted, that's what they got. And so Ellen G. White marries a man named James White. James has a name that's indicative of the same thing as Jacob. Means the same thing as the name Jacob. Now Jacob deceived his twin brother Esau out of his birthright, and he was called a deceiver and a supplanter. So Jacob committed a sin when he fraudulently deceived his brother out of his birthright. No matter how honest his intentions were, they still was a sin, the way Jacob did. So that's the reason why his name stands for supplanter or deceiver. So James White, named James being synonymous with Jacob, he coveted this office of the bay horses that his wife had, the office of inspiration. He did not want to be a lead team opposing his wife. He wanted Yahweh to push his wife out of the way and give him that office of inspiration, but not so. So James White, when he married Ellen G. White in 1845, he represents the leadership of these grizzle horses. Okay? And so now, he wasn't content, though, with the way things worked out. And so by 1863, he was joined with some other brethren that had infiltrated the little Advent band since 1844. He had joined up with them to form a league that they would form a General Conference Association of Seventh-day Adventists, and that they would elect a president without consulting Ellen G. White on it. Okay? And so that's exactly what they did. And James White wanted to be the first president, but he couldn't be. There was someone else, I forget his name, that they elected as the first president of the General Conference in 1863. But James White, he lobbied long enough for the next 17 years that he was able to become president of the General Conference no less than 3 times during the next 17 years until his death in 1881. Okay. So James White wanted to be the sole ruler of the Adventist Church. And that's the reason why he sought hard to get the presidency and to keep it of the General Conference. So he represented this grizzle horses, and I had this on my last tape, but it's worth reviewing, folks. Now, we know that 1888 was their first test. By that time, the General Conference had a new president that assumed the leadership of these grizzle horses. And sometimes we'll break it all down and give you the names of each one of these General Conference presidents as they took their office as the president of the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. And every time we had a new president, he assumed this role of the grizzle horses leadership. All right, now this is good news. Well, we got it on Zoom. We're just going ahead and just leave it right there for a little bit. So here you have it. If you folks can see this on tape, so the bay and grizzle horses, they made their grand entry here in 1844 with a double leadership. This Laodicean Church, Adventist Church, made their grand entry upon the stage of prophecy, upon the fulfillment of the 2300-day prophecy that took place in 1844. 2300 years that prophecy had been on hold until 1844, and lo and behold, when it made its fulfillment for the restoration of the sanctuary and put it back into operation, that came with this here 2300-day prophecy, telling the Adventists that this was their job. Cleanse the sanctuary, restore the sanctuary, and put it back into full operation. That was a job description given to them by prophecy. Instead, they didn't do it. Why? Because this double horse team of grizzle horses that represents those Jesuit Catholics that was formed in 1540 by Ignatius Loyola, and he was underground watchdog for the Catholic Church, and he was the one that was a military right arm of the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church had already had their power broken in 1500 by Martin Luther, and so the Catholic Church, in order to get their power back, they had to form a group of spy masters, and they had this man named Loyola, and they formed the Jesuit Society of Jesus Christ in 1540. Okay, so that was their FBI. That was their secret service, and that was their secret service. That was their military arm. That were the assassins that had a special job description. And so the Jesuits became the assassins to do whatever it would take in order to get the power of the Catholic Church back. But in doing this, they became the power of the Catholic Church, and they became a separate entity from the Catholic Church. The Jesuits had their own religious organization. They were independent of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church was powerless to do anything about it, because the Jesuits also had themselves a pope. That's another thing that people don't realize. When the Jesuits was formed as a spy network for the Catholic Church, then she appointed herself a Jesuit. And incidentally, now the last pope that has been appointed, he's a Jesuit. First Jesuit that's ever held the Pope's position in the Vatican. Because the Jesuits that hold the position, they call it the Black Pope. He has his headquarters in the north, up around Norway, up in the northern, away from the Vatican. The Black Pope does. And he is the ultimate ruler of the Catholic Church, and he rules over the Vatican's Pope. Okay, so you call the Pope for the Jesuits as the Black Pope, and you call the Pope for the Vatican as a White Pope. Well, the Black Pope rules over the White Pope, just like we got black people ruling over our government here today. Just like the black people are ruling over all the governments of the world now, by virtue of us having this here black man that rules over the United States. He's called the ruler of the world. So we got a black man that's the Antichrist, that's the president of the United States, and he is ruling over all the world. That's the reason why anything he does can't be questioned or brought into judgment. Nobody has the power here on earth. Not even our own Congress and Senate. They all are so fearful of him, they just give him a blank check for anything he wants. So, we know we're at a stream of time, folks. The Jesuits are in charge. But guess what? The Jesuits aren't in charge of Obama, the President of the United States. That woman that's riding that beast is in charge of Obama. And that's Mystery Babylon. Okay. So indirectly, I guess you could say the Black Pope does work through Mystery Babylon. And in that case, then he would be over Obama. But if he does it, then Obama has got a whole separate entity all of his own. And so I'm suspecting, though, that he's ruled over by that Black Pope indirectly. So now, that's enough information right now on the two popes and the two Vaticans. One has his headquarters in the north, up there around Norway, up in the Netherlands, and the other one has his headquarters down in the south at Rome, Italy. Okay, so now it says this great paradox that the Adventists now in 1890, having confirmed that they rejected that message, those messengers of the covenant, Jones and Wagner, and that was a message of the covenant of the blood. They were messengers of the blood of the everlasting covenant. Let's just put it that way, from here on in. And any messenger that Yahweh sends to his church after Jones and Wagner, were messengers of the blood of the covenant of the Yahshua. Martin Luther, the first messenger of the blood of the covenant, proved that. He proved that in the book that he wrote on Romans after he had an experience of being converted from Catholicism in 1500. He proved that in his writings, that it was the blood of the everlasting covenant that he saw in that Romans 1:17 when he says the righteous, the just shall live by faith. He recognized that as by faith in the blood of Yahshua, the blood of the everlasting covenant. And once that divine revelation, it completely changed him and made born again, became born again and converted in the Yahshua for life. Just through that one doctrine, the blood of the everlasting covenant. So everyone that's come to the Adventist Church since 1844, their message is strictly pointing to the one thing, the blood of the everlasting covenant, that is to be brought forth and taught in a new and living way by the Yahshua. Okay? That's in Hebrews 10:20. By a new and living way. It's through the blood of the everlasting covenant. That's your new and living way. And it says also by the blood of sprinkling, Hebrews 12:22-24. It also says it's through the blood of the Yahshua in Romans 3:24 and 25. It's in the blood. It's in his blood. And also right there in Revelation chapter 1. That's there. A key verse right there. I think it's 1:7 maybe. We'll turn to it and try to catch it right quick if we can. And it says, Revelation 1:5. It says, and from Yahshua Messiah, who is the faithful witness, and the first begotten of the dead, and the prince of the kings of the earth, unto us, that loved us and washed us from our sins in his own blood. Now folks, if we can't resurrect this theme of the blood of the everlasting covenant for this one purpose, it has to be resurrected. It has to be brought forth and taught on the stage of the world for all people aspiring to have salvation and to be harvested here in this 12th prayer body that we're in right now. And it's expedient that we get this to the Christian world today. And it's a must. And so from now on, all these sermons that I'll be doing, putting up on the YouTube and every which way, it's going to be on videos. You can order the videos. And you can order the CDs. I'll have them on CDs and videos and YouTube. And we're going to start streaming them on other outlets, this information. Okay, it's time for it, and so we are getting geared up for it, and this is where we're at today in the Standard Time. So, fasten your seatbelts, folks. It's going to be a grand and awesome ride from here on in. Now, so what happens in 1890, the Grizzly Horses had their first test at leadership, and they failed. Okay. Now, in 1930, they had their second test. Had to continue on leading this chariot. But instead, they were on their way to Egypt. You see, they were going south. Now, where is Yahweh's throne at? Yahweh's throne is in the side of the north. What was this leadership that's leading Yahweh's predestinated congregation of the Seventh-day Advent? What were they doing? Doing everything possible to get themselves back to the South Country and get lost. And yet they had the message of the everlasting covenant that was bequeathed unto the Seventh-day Adventists in 1844. They had the message for the Savior of the world. Laodicea itself means a people declaring judgment. Okay? So you can't declare judgment unless you restore the sanctuary system. And you can't declare judgment on anybody unless you could show them how to be cleansed by this blood of Yahshua that I read to you in Revelation 1:5. So, here we are. We've got those Jesuits that's taken over now on the Laodicean church. Infiltrated. And when they first infiltrated? Right there in 1844. Who was their first infiltrator? Uriah Smith. the one that wrote that thoughts on the Daniel Revelation, and the Adventists so gladly published it to take the place of Ellen G. White's writing of the Great Controversy. And then Mrs. White said that that Great Controversy needed to be published and put out before 1890, so that people could see the truth and know exactly the right decision to make when 1890 was over. That they would all of them, if they read the Great Controversy. And so what those Jesuit devils do, they first had their Jesuit representative, Uriah Smith, having the Daniel Revelations prepared at the same time Ellen G. White was preparing the Great Controversy. And then right there in 1888, 1890, what did they do? They hurriedly got together and put together the little book, Bible Readings for the Home Circle. That was supposed to be the readings you're supposed to, and they formed the Religious Liberty Organization. Okay? And that was to take the place on Sister White's promoting Great Controversy, and for all the Adventists to accept Jones and Wagner so they could move on to the next step and the next level. Well, we know the Jesuits did their mighty work. They got 2 books published that circumvented Ellen G. White's Great Controversy. And so what she'd tell them after 1890, she said, well, folks, don't get no hurry now to publish the Great Controversy, because she said it's too late now. It's too late to do what it was designed to do. It was designed to save the Adventist movement. But since your enemy come in and stole your crown, and she said by 1890 they had completely made it back to Egypt. She said they were steadily retreating back toward Egypt between 1844 and 1890. She said by 1890, when they rejected Jones and Wagner, they had successfully made it back to Egypt. So how long has the Seventh-day Adventists been residing in Egypt, spiritual Egypt? Since 1890. Now the Adventist Church is about to cough up to 144,000, and she don't even know it. And how many years ago has that been? Okay. That's been 123 years ago. Period. That the Adventist Church has successfully made it back to Egypt, but yet they continue on the leadership here of the grizzled horses. And they were doing their leadership from Egypt, spiritual Egypt. In other words, out there in the secular world of Babylon. That's where they had finally made it. They got all the Adventists acclimated to them in their headquarters. They established their headquarters, though, in the sides of the north here in the United States, up in Washington, D.C. Silver Springs, Maryland later. And right there close to Washington, D.C. Representing that bear, the bear is a symbol of the Adventist leadership. And he resides in the north, and the lion represents the leadership of this Davidian Seventh-day Adventists that came out of this, actually emerged with the bay horses in charge of this chariot, and the grizzled horses would not, and they weren't cut loose in 1930 either. So what happened? They continued on until prophecy cut them loose. Prophecy cut them loose in 2002 at Chariot, Texas, because they were in the South Country already. They've been there for a long time, about 115 years. And so Yahweh just cut them loose. I had sent his son Yahshua to do it, and just cut them loose and left them there. And moved on with this here Laodicean chariot with the bay horses. Now, this chariot only has one team of horses now. You can just take and put your hand over those grizzled horses, and now all you see is all 4 of these chariots only have a single team of horses pulling. You know, this Seventh-day Adventist Church no longer has a double leadership representing her today. So that's how far, and that's been ongoing for 10 years, folks. But we're in the judgment of living, and we're in the 12th periodic hour. So now, what are we gearing up to do now as the House of David, representing these here bay horses, the pure doctrine of pure leadership? That's what we're doing right now with our messages that we're putting out here on the airwaves. And so we're going to contact the whole Adventist world worldwide with these messages. We're going to contact all the Davidians worldwide with these messages. We're going to tell them they're available now. To click on the YouTubes and we'll show them how to find it and so forth. And so this is where we're at. That's the reason why Yahweh told me to take these charts of V.T. Holiff, and you take his Shepherd God book and all of his related tracts that he's written, like this great Parodox. This is the second tract that he wrote. The first one was pre-11th hour extra. He did that one. We're going to end up doing all these miscellaneous tracts that he wrote. There's about 15 of them, I understand. 16 of them. Actually 17 to be exact. So when we get through doing all these here tracts and correlating them with the charts, folks, those of you that are students and want to be students of the School of the Prophets, here's a place where you can join up. And if you'll contact us at the 11thhourpaul.com, we have on our website information how you can get in touch with us and respond back to this, and you can join this everlasting kingdom of David. And the requirements is that you do Isaiah 56. Go read it for yourself. Lay hold of this covenant and do those things which the everlasting covenant requires for you to do. And you can go read about this everlasting covenant is in the book of the first 5 books of the laws of Moses, especially in Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and Leviticus, especially in Leviticus. Leviticus 26, for instance, like 14 and 15, it said that if you will not do all of my commandments and statutes and precepts that I command you, and that you break my covenant, he said, well, then I will also break my covenant with you, that you won't be no people to me. So if you want to be his people, then go read in the law of Moses about the everlasting covenant, and you start with the Exodus, and when you get to Exodus 24, verse 8, he says Moses had dedicated the blood of the everlasting covenant of the animal for this covenant with the people of Sinai when they come out of Egypt. Now, so we're rocking right along. As I told you before, and it's worth reviewing. This is my second time to go over this information. We have breaking new light every time we do. So what I want to say is that in 1930, the General Conference was still the grizzled horse leadership, but the horses had taken on a new leadership in 1915 at the death of Ellen G. White. And that was Emmett Andreessen, a highly regarded Adventist minister and high up in the Adventist world, and he published with the Office of the Inspiration, the 3 little books is called Isaiah the Gospel Prophet, and published the last 13 chapters of Isaiah in those 3 little books, starting with Isaiah 54 and ending in Isaiah 66. And you know what that is. Isaiah 66 is the harvest in the 12th parabolic hour of the 144,000 going and getting their brethren and bringing and putting them in a clean vessel and bringing them to his holy mountain, Jerusalem. So, V.T. Holiff saw the inspiration in it in 1929 because the Adventists had ordered that those 3 little booklets be published in the Sabbath School Quarterly that covered 3 months in 1929, from January, February, March. They commissioned it to be done, and they did. V.T. Holiff, being a Sabbath school teacher in the Adventist Church at Loma Linda at the time, seized upon the Sabbath School Quarterly and the content of it, and saw that there was breaking prophetic news, and so therefore inspiration gave him the understanding of those 3 little booklets, and he began to teach the inspiration of it to his Sabbath school class here in the Adventist Church. Well, word got around in the Adventist Church that what V.T. Holiff was doing, and so V.T. Holiff drew everybody else from all the other Sabbath school classes to his class on a weekly basis. Well, the Sabbath school teachers of those other classes got along. They said, look, We don't have nobody coming to our classes. They're all going to this V.T. Hollis class. So the General Conference sent some ministers in there to monitor what V.T. Hollis was teaching, what was causing him to draw so much interest of all the Adventists. Yeah. When they went in there and realized what V.T. Hollis was doing, they interrupted him and said, "You can't do that here. You can't teach that here in this church." He said, "Hey, it's right here endorsed by you, the General Conference. It's all endorsed. He said, your minister is the one that wrote this. I'm just teaching on it." They said, "Yeah, but we don't agree with your version. You can't do that here." So a lady in a Sabbath school class that morning rose up and she said, "Well, I live in that two-story house right across the street." Said, "Everybody that wants to continue this study, let's just come to my house. If V.T. Hollis can't teach that in here, well then I don't want to be no more of this church." So she got up and she led that whole Sabbath school class out of V.T. Hollis' classroom, and they all followed her across the street. And that's when the Adventist Church kicked out V.T. Hollis. Literally kicked him out at that meeting. That was in 1929. V.T. Hollis didn't even get to start his commission until 1930. So the Adventists give him his exit in 1929. And so he had inspiration then to start the Rod movement, because exactly what Isaiah taught this information. And so he had something to launch on. So the Adventists launched V.T. Hollis, and so V.T. Hollis then took the Bay Horse leadership away from M.L. Andreessen, the Adventist minister that had published those three little books of Isaiah the Gospel Prophet. So now he takes the mantle from an Adventist minister, and he keeps in charge of the Bay Horses, the Office of Inspiration. General Conference still held on to their leadership of the Grizzle horses. They never changed a leadership for those Grizzle horses. From the time they was born in 1863, they never changed leadership. They just voted a new conference president and made him the leader to continue on these Grizzle horses. But the Bay horses changed leadership. Every time they changed the Office of Inspiration, and by the death of the prophet or whatever, then they had to have someone to succeed them. And so there was always a new person. And those people that succeeded V.T. Hollis come from the Adventist Church. We're Adventist ministers. Can you believe that? So here the Adventist is producing Grizzle horse leaders and producing Bay horse leaders. Okay, at the same time. It's all coming out of the Adventist Church. And yet they're not going to allow us to be taught in their church. They could escape it. All right? So now, in 1955, V.T. Hollis died. And it says in Zechariah 13:7, it says, "Smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall scatter. But I will turn my hand upon the little ones." Okay. So in 1955, Yahweh smote the shepherd. He died. He still had 15 years left on his tenure, V.T. Hollis did, but he died 15 years ahead. Okay. So he had a successor, Ben Roden. And Ben Roden is 15 years older than the next successor, and that was Brother Study Johnson. So Ben Roden then got the privilege then to succeed V.T. Hollis as a leader of the Shepherd's Rock. But Ben Roden did not want to continue on teaching the Rod message. He wanted to teach his interpretation of what he thought the future held for the church, and that was to teach the branch message that V.T. Hollis has said was be the next great movement to come after the Rod movement. Ben Roden, not understanding that he had 15 more years left of the Rod movement, he instituted then the branch movement within the Rod movement in 1960. In 1960, the Rod movement still had 10 years to go, but Ben Roden didn't know that. So he took then the leadership of the grizzled horses. He wrestled the leadership away from the General Conference, even though the General Conference continued on being the leader of the Adventist Church. Now, how do we reconcile that then? If Ben Roden also coming out of the Shepherd Rod, and he gets also command of these two horses. All right, remember earlier I told you in my tape that it's an amazing thing that we have two horses that represents the leadership, and they represent the same thing. And I told you that in 1970, Brother W. Johnson represented one of the grizzled horses, and his son Daniel, that he ordained and anointed to be his associate pastor, represented the other one. Well, that's not so. I have to retract that because of breaking light now. So what is these two double-spanner horses, leaders? What does that represent? Well, I told you Ben Roden had apostatized from continuing on with the rod message after D.T. Howard died in 1955. He invented his own. So Ben Roden then, he couldn't roust the General Conference out from being the leader, representing these bay horses. But he could get in there and take charge of one of them, one of the horses. So now here we have Ben Roden and the General Conference Association of Seventh-day Adventists, the president, representing this double lead team of grizzled horses. This is brand new life, folks. Just opened up just now. I was hitting on that on my sermon before. I hit on the version of that, but I didn't quite have it right. But now it's opened up. So now, so in 1970, Brother Johnson emerges as the successor of Ben Roden and the rod with the Isaac branch message. Now he has a true branch message. It's given to Brother, but his time began in 1970. So Brother Johnson emerges then as this younger, stronger team, the bay horse leadership. He emerged with that. And again, he had his son anointed as his associate pastor. So Brother Johnson and his son represent the leadership of these bay horses. Here's Brother, here's his son. Okay. Now it has to be that way. Father and son. Okay. Now, when Brother Johnson apostatized, then he takes the place of Ben Roden that had charge of one of these grizzled horses. And his son would take the, actually him and his son would take control of one horse because the General Conference is still leading the Adventist Church, the president. And until the 144,000 comes forth, you're going to have that double leadership of the General Conference president running the Adventist Church. No matter who you are raised up as a voice of inspiration to her, they're still going to be the leaders. So you've got to have the apostatized prophet to represent one of these like Ben Roden did. And you're going to have the General Conference representing the other horse. A dual leadership with a dual span of horses. Okay, now this is deep stuff, folks. This is deep. That's the way it is now from here on in. As this stuff breaks to me, and when I'm presenting this, I will give it to you. So what you're doing when you hear this message for the first time, you're getting it at the same time that I'm getting it. You just get it a little bit later than I did. Okay. Now, in 1970, when Brother Johnson emerged as the firstborn now, so now he's the elder. I also emerged out of the Adventist Church to join him in 1970 to start this movement of the branch, third feeding pasture. Okay, so at that time, Brother Johnson represented one bay horse. I represented the other bay horse. But when Brother Johnson, a year or so later, decided to anoint his son as his ordained associate pastor, he did that to take my place. By doing that act of anointing his son to be his associate pastor, then Yahweh's choice was me. But he dismissed me from being one of these bay horses leaders. He dismissed me. He put his son in my place. Okay? Now, this is interesting. So, and then there comes a time when Brother Johnson was in charge of these bay horses now until 2002. And all I am is a younger twin brother, Antitypical-Jacob, that's waiting to inherit the birthright that Yahweh had already given me through the tithe. Okay? So I'm waiting now for the appointed time to inherit the birthright. Well, I had to wait at least 30 years. So in 1999, I inherited the birthright. But I couldn't execute the commission of that birthright until Brother Johnson was taken off the scene. And that was in 2002, 2003. Okay. So now I'm put in charge of these bay horses. 2002. I represent the bay horse leadership of this Chariot 7-day Advent. 2002. Now, what happens is, these grizzled horses, though, are still connected and running the Adventist Church. Now, so I told you before that Brother Johnson was cut loose, and I told you that he represented the leadership of the grizzled horses. Well, I'm going to have to change that now, too, with the breaking news on this prophecy. Yeah, all your prophets have been called to succeed each other, to sit upon the throne of David. They took the role of the bay horses. It's just that when they apostatized, they were cut off. But they never did have the role of the grizzled horses. Never did. The General Conference always had that role. So I told you earlier, and even in this report here today, that Ben Roden was one of these horses. No, I'm going to have to retract that. Ben Roden was one of the horses in charge of these bay. The leader was in charge of these bay horses. The Office of Inspiration, because Ben Roden had inspiration. Brother Johnson had lots of inspiration. So that automatically puts them with the bay horses always. With inspiration. Whether they stay true to it or whether they apostatize from it, they still have to take charge of these bay horses. Represent the bay horses. General Conference has always represented the grizzled horses from day one. Now if you want to put two men in charge, one representing this grizzle and another representing this grizzle, then do the General Conference president and his vice president. Put those two together. Make them the leadership of this grizzled horses. Okay? So now, if you want to make Brother Johnson and his son an associate pastor, make him associate pastor in charge of these two horses, the bay. That's the Office of Inspiration that they're in charge of. And I knew that I had to redo this. I had to do a second term on this great paradox from what I did last time, because I didn't get all the light that I'm getting now. So, folks, I'm telling you right now, and you know, I told you that these grizzled horses was cut loose in 2002 when Brother Johnson was spewed out. No, they weren't cut loose. Those grizzled horses are still connected to this church. And they'll be connected as long until the 144,000 comes forth. And then that's when they're cut loose. Then that's when these bay horses then will have the freedom to go to and fro through the earth. And you'll find that in Isaiah 66. Right now, they're still tied to the General Conference. As long as they're still in existence, those grizzled horses are going to be connected to those bay horses. double leadership in the house of Israel today. Okay? What we're doing is representing the house of David, tribe of Judah, lawgiver, where Yahshua has come and taken the reins in his own hand. Yahshua is in our camp. He's the one that's orchestrating and opening up all this inspiration that I'm revealing to you right now. And he's purifying our camp even as we speak. He's purifying our camp. And once we get our camp purified, then we can start looking forward to sitting dates of when this 144,000 is going to come forth. And when these grizzled horses are going to be cut rid of. It represents the general conference leadership. Okay? You cannot cut them loose until after Ezekiel 9 has done its investigative work for the judgment of the dead and living. Ezekiel 9 is Yahshua coming, taking the reins in his own hand, starting the judgment of the living by being the man in linen in Ezekiel 9 with the writer's inkhorn by his side. The first phase of the investigative judgment is just go through and investigate the records of all of the Seventh-day Adventist Church since 1844. That's the investigative judgment of. And so when you start the investigative judgment of the living, then you have to start when the 144,000 are all present in the Adventist Church. And you can say safely that they're all present today. And you can say safely that they're all present 10 years ago. So when you start the investigative judgment of the living with Ezekiel 9, you have to start with all the 144,000 being present in the Adventist Church. Because Yahshua is going through the city. He's that man there in Ezekiel 9. He's one of the writers' inkhorn. He's going to go through the city first. He's going to precede those 5 angels with slaughtering weapons that goes after him. First, he's going to go through and mark all those who sign and confess the abominations done in the midst of. This is no way of sanctifying the house of Israel. This doesn't constitute sanctifying the house of Israel. It only constitutes sitting aside those who are signing and confess all the abominations against their former brethren, the terrors, that they had to coexist with until Yahshua come and separate them. So he separated me and my wife and Alan DeLong in 2002 from the Adventist Church through Brother W. Johnson. Only because we were signing and crying for all the abominations done in the midst of it. We were just as guilty of sin as they were. We had filthy garments just like they did. And we still have filthy garments. And when we personally line up with the covenant 100%, then that's when we get rid of our filthy garments. So we're in the process of working on that right now, of coming up on every standard, everything that's required of us. So Yahshua, when he comes and visibly to address his servant, the messenger of the covenant, Elijah David, we can look on his face then, because he's going to come back and say, well, it says right there in Hebrews 9. And I'm going to read that to you because this is exactly what this is all about. It's Hebrews 9. It's right at the end of that chapter. He says, he said now, for Yahshua, in verse 24, for Yahshua has not entered into the holy places made with the hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself now to appear in the presence of the Elohim for us. Nor yet that he should offer himself often as the high priest entereth into the holy place every year with the blood of others. For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. But now once in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. Okay, so he put away sin when he appeared in the end of the second world. And the first end of the first world was the antediluvian flood, or the antediluvian. We had a second end at the cross, and Yahshua died personally on the cross to put away sin. Put away sin of all of those who followed the blood of the everlasting covenant under the Old Testament, from Adam down to the cross. That's the sin he put away. He said it right here in Hebrews 10:14. It says, for by one offering he hath perfected forever them that are sanctified. So, those that were sanctified on the old covenant, so following the blood of the everlasting covenant under Moses, starting with Moses, we're starting with Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel. Those that's found following the blood of the everlasting covenant from Cain and Abel clear on down, then they were the ones that he made an offering for and sanctified them by one offering after he rose and resurrected. That's 2,000 years ago. But the main thing was that he put an end of sins. Okay? And he says in Hebrews 9:27, he said, and as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment. So it is appointed unto all men to die up to the judgment. What judgment? When the judgment of the living begins. Now the only one that's going to be appointed to die is those that don't have their names found and written in the Lamb's Book of Life, with their sins blotted out. So that took place in 2002. So Yahshua was once offered to bear the sins of many, once to bear the sins of many. That many was all of those that had followed the blood system under the old covenant up to his death. But now, but unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. Why? All those that have sanctified themselves through following the new and living way, Hebrews 10:20, and I'm looking right here at it, by a new and living way which he hath consecrated for us through the veil, that is to say through his flesh, and having an high priest over the house of the Elohim, let us draw near with a true heart and a full assurance of the faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with the pure water. Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. And let us consider one another to provoke unto love and unto good works. Okay? And not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. Folks, that day is approaching. So all of you folks that are preordained from the foundation of the world to have salvation, then draw near and listen to these messages that are coming to you now. And we'll see to it that you have a way to hear them every day, one way or another. This brings the close of our study this hour. Contact us at the 11th hour call, and that's number 11. Click on our audio archive to hear this message and more. We're going to close now with a song entitled Sweet Hour of Prayer. Sweet hour of prayer, sweet hour of prayer, that calls me from a world of care, and bids me at my Father's throne, make all my wrongs and wishes known. The seasons of distress and grief, my soul has often found relief, and oft escape the tempter's snare, but I return, sweet hour of prayer, sweet hour of prayer, sweet hour of prayer, my wings shall my position bear, to him whose truth and faithfulness engage the waiting soul to bless, and since he bids me see